We wanted to get a couple of people on today that are experts. First, with the military side of it, is Lieutenant Colonel Bill Cowan. Hello, Bill. How are you, sir?
Good to be with you, Glenn. I'm fine. Thank you very much.
Good. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about this on the, first of all, the humanoid robots, because you have been writing about this. You are up to speed, and I'm afraid a lot of people will say, oh, come on, humanoid robots, we're a million miles away. We're really not, are we?
No, we're not a million miles away, and we see humanoid robots almost in these concepts where we send a robot into a building to maybe talk with a hostage taker, or as you were suggesting earlier, to go defuse a bomb or something. There are robots out there with humanoid characteristics that we're currently using, but we're driving a lot of money to the notion that humanoid robots will be active on the battlefield, Glenn, and you know, it goes, as you suggested also earlier, it's that split-second decision where a decision has to be made wherein somebody's life hangs in the balance. And a good example is those two shepherds. I haven't seen the movie yet, but those two shepherds that were let loose by the SEALs, you know, you don't know that a humanoid robot is going to make that kind of decision. It's going to evaluate the threat that's posed by them and probably do something to them. So I don't think we're that far away.
I have to tell you something, Bill. I also am concerned, you know, if you look at the studies of, like, let's say the NFL, if you look at the injuries of the NFL compared to the injuries of rugby, the injuries of rugby are a lot less, even though it's more violent and they're not wearing any pads, compared to the injuries of the NFL. Because once you have all of that stuff on you, all that technology to keep you safe, you become more aggressive. If we're not putting any humans down on the ground or in the air, don't we run a serious risk of becoming more aggressive? Because what do we care? Just go send the robots in to do it.
No, absolutely, Glenn. No question about it. And I think that's the big issue. Incidentally, robots are a lot more fragile also. A 22 shell can take out a robot, where a 22 shell is not likely to take out a soldier fighting in the field. But there's a lot of aspects about the actual ground warfare that go on that an individual combat soldier needs to know, needs to have. We've got a lot of armor on those guys right now. But all those things aren't replaceable by a robot. Certainly robots have plenty of applications, the movement of logistics, the movement of wounded soldiers maybe, going forward and being shot at and ferreting out where the enemy are by reconnaissance means. But when it comes to combat, when it comes to soldiers firing at soldiers, that human element is what makes the difference in victory. Now, the human element can be making decisions that have robotic implications, like robot shoot at that clump of trees, or robot fire an artillery round out there 400 meters or whatever. But those split-second decisions that the individual human has to make are not things you can impart upon a robot. That's a man or a woman sitting there making the decision around which people's lives are involved.
Lieutenant Colonel, thank you very much. Always good to talk to you, sir. Stay safe. Let me go to
thanks, Glenn.
Let me go to Scott Cleland. He is the guy that wrote the book Search and Destroy. He is the president of Precursor LLC, and I wanted to ask him, because I think a lot of people will say that this is sci-fi stuff, and it's moving so fast. We're approaching the singularity. You know who Ray Kurzweil is. We're approaching the singularity, and this thing is going to be upon us, and it's going to be too late to have this debate. Tell me the biggest problem that people are not thinking about when it comes to Google and getting into bed with the military.
Well, first of all, what Google has done is its mission is to centralize information power. And it's well there. It's the only entity in the world that has a mission to collect all the world's public and private information. And it's developed more ways to monitor more people more intimately than any entity ever. Now, so that's the power they have. The thing that most troubles me is how unethical they are. And that is that they don't think stealing is wrong. They don't think lying is wrong. They don't think that it's a problem for them to break the laws. Laws are for other people, for the little people. And so they have a long track record. They also don't have a corporate conscience. I mean, for 7 years, they were advertising illegal drugs to kids, steroids to kids, and OxyContin to other Americans. And they had to pay a $500 million penalty for that, which was actually, they got off light from the Department of Justice. So you have an unethical company with enormous power, and as you described, exponentially increasing power.
I don't think people understand this, because I used to fly out of New York, just in Connecticut, and you know, the JetBlue would come in and it would fly by, and it would be all next to these corporate hangars, and on the back of several corporate jets was a logo. Most people would go by and they don't think it's Google because they think it's all the little rainbow colors in the word Google. Explain their corporate logo, because I think it says a lot.
Well, the word Google is a mathematical term spelled differently, but it's basically the largest number ever named. So it's 1 with 100 zeros behind it. So the ambition they have, that's the thing that's extraordinary. Larry Page, the CEO of Google, has limitless ambition. And there's nothing wrong with ambition if there are checks and balances on that ambition, if there is a rule of law. If there are ethics, some type of conscience that prevents you from using that power. When I wrote the book, the organizing theme was power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, which is what Lord Acton said. And in Google's hands, it is playing out every day. They just, they can do whatever they please because they can get away with it. They do.
Would you say
they do it all in the name of innovation?
Would you say that they are the emerging superpower? Possibly the only world superpower? And which one, when does that flip to where they become the dog and not the tail?
Well, they already are the internet superpower. They have 1 billion search users. They track 2 billion people. As you were describing, they have 1 billion map users.
But Scott, what I'm talking about...
They already are the internet superpower.
Internet superpower is one thing, but you remember, we grew up and J. Edgar Hoover was in charge of the FBI. And the reason why he was there and nobody ever messed with him is he had information on everyone. So at what point do they become the dog and not the tail? Because, Senator, Mr. President, Your Highness, I don't think you're going to do that.
They already are. And what's funny is my testimony about 5 years ago to the House of Representatives was called J. Edgar Google. That's how I put it in perspective of what the problem was. They already have that. They had their antitrust investigation just kind of mysteriously go away. Now people can say, well, they didn't find anything. Or they can say that Google got to somebody. And what I wrote in my book is, anytime you have somebody with unfettered, unlimited power to basically know everything about people, and they know more about people than people know about themselves, or their parents know about them, or their friends know about them, intimate stuff, because whatever they track and record, they don't forget. And then they say, well, wait a minute, I guess somebody's got a weakness, and they know where it is. And they can do it on an individual basis or a mass basis. Think about this, Glenn, that if they wanted to track, if the government wanted to track, gun lovers or certain freedom-loving patriots or some militia group, if they decided to have a tool, Google's already that tool. Google knows where most everybody is that reads these things. They know it through maps. They know it through Android. And if the government ever wanted to go by and do a dragnet and collect most of them, Google would be the tool that they would use today.
Is there anybody that's really in ethics there? We've got about 30 seconds. Is there any leadership in ethics there at all?
Not that I've seen, and I've studied them very carefully over the last 7 or 8 years.
Thank you very much. Back in just a second.